All right, what is up, guys? VV back with another video. And in today's video, I'm going to talk a little bit about theory crafting. We're going to talk about a concept that comes up a lot, I feel like, in TCG circles as games evolve, as games progress and go through sets. And something inevitably happens. And it's a concept known as power creep. And in today's video, we're going to kind of tackle that. We're going to talk about it. And as usual with these kind of videos that I do, they're always meant to be more of an educational thing. So if you have your own opinion on it and you have, experience, in what we're talking about today, by all means, add it to the comment section below and tell us what you think, right? Because it's an open forum, guys. This is a totally open forum. I'm just going to give my 2 cents on what I think about power creep. And in this video, it will specifically, of course, be in reference to the One Piece TCG. I mean, some concepts will apply elsewhere, but you guys get the point. So real quick, this is what is not power creep, right? That's one thing I want to say real quick. I want to show the difference between what is power creep and what is not power creep. So this, I mean, some people still might argue it is, but I think you'll see what I'm saying when I explain it. So Meteor Volcano came out in OP02 on the left. That's this card over here on the left. And then on the right here is Gum Gum Pistol, which came out in ST08, right? Now, here's the idea behind these two cards. The Meteor Volcano can KO a character with the cost of 1 or less, but the Gum Gum Pistol can KO a character with the cost of 2 or less. Oh man, well there's power creep, right? No, not really, because these events, excuse me, they're pretty well costed. They're proportionally costed. Essentially, what has been determined, by the people who developed this game is that in order to KO a 1 or less, you're going to have to pay 2 Dawn. That's kind of what they want to establish here. And maybe it even should be 1 cost. However, adding on the trigger adds another point of value to the card. Right? Maybe not. I'm not sure about the trigger comment. That's just an opinion. But we can see right here that, okay, they want to make the starting value to KO a character at 1 cost to be 2. And then, okay, well, what about to KO a character that costs 2 or less on an event, by the way? We're not talking about on a character that totally changes the math. But on an event, what about one that KOs 2? Okay, well, let's just add 1 Dawn to it. Okay, that seems pretty fair. It seems pretty even. Especially if you were to combo it with a leader like Garp, right? There's a pretty standard translation rate, right? Or the conversion rate is about the same. Okay, so I would not consider this power creep, even though one card is KOing something a little bit bigger than the other. Now, this is what I would consider power creep. Now, yes, I understand it is across 2 different colors, but let's read and see what's going on here and then talk about it. They're both 2 cost. One's black and one's blue. That's not too relevant. But the Meteor Volcano on the left here is main KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 1 or less. And then over here, for Hound Blaze, this card's coming out OP05. Remember, Meteor Volcano OP02, Hound Blaze OP05. Okay, listen to what this does. I'm not even going to read the first part yet. I'm just going to read the second part. Then, from here... let me start from here. Place up to 1 character with a cost of 2 or less at the bottom of the owner's deck. Okay, so not only is that effect alone stronger for the exact same cost, but there's also an additional effect added onto this. Of main, up to one of your leader or character cards gains plus 3,000 power during this turn. So do y'all see what's going on here? Hound Blaze is just strictly better than Meteor Volcano in every single regard, except if you want to argue the trigger. Some people would argue that this trigger is better than Hound Blaze's, but other people would argue the opposite. Trigger, return up to 1 character with the cost of 3 or less to the owner's hand. That's, slowing down your opponent, whereas Meteor Volcano is potentially getting you more answers with their trigger. But let's not even talk about the triggers, because you can't bank on a trigger. That's just, well, I hope I get it, especially in a black deck or a blue deck. You can't really set your triggers up, typically speaking. So let's just talk about the main effect alone, which is the most relevant feature of the card. Hound Blaze blows the Meteor Volcano out of the water, right? No pun intended. But this is bottom decking a 2 or less, whereas this is KOing a 1 or less. And for those who don't know, bottom decking is just strictly a better form of removal than KOing, because certain cards like Fukuro and Borsalino cannot be KO'd. So, okay, but they can still be bottom decked. You see what's going on there? And then you add on to the fact that this also gives plus 3,000 power during the turn. So you see that this is an example of what power creep looks like, a strong, steady example. Let's look at red as well. Some people might argue this is not as good of an example, but I actually think it is. So y'all bear with me here. So we have on the left here for OP02, Vista. They're both Whitebeard Pirates, by the way. And I should mention that for the last example, they were both Navy searchable. But for the red example here, Vista is a 3-cost, 3,000 power character with a 1,000 counter that has on play to KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 3,000 power or less. Marco is a 5-cost, 6,000 power, so you're getting a slightly more power for your cost investment, and a 1,000 counter, and also has your turn on play, KO up to one of your opponent's characters with 3,000 power or less. Okay, and then it also has a additional effect of on KO, you may trash an event card from your hand and then play this character from the trash as rested. So when he gets KO'd, you can bring him back, right? Now, yes, I hear some people already saying, yeah, but for 3 cost, Vista has more utility. And that, yeah, that is potentially true, especially like in Red-Green Law, which I won't talk too much about because that did just receive a pretty sizable nerf just before me recording this video. At the time of me recording this video, there was a ban that affected Whitebeard, which, you know, this Vista is Whitebeard. But it affected Whitebeard and Trafalgar Law and Zorro the most. Okay, so anyway, I would consider this a version of power creep, though. Because there's also another idea of power creep of just, okay, while it might not just be this obvious as the Navy, the Hound Blaze and Meteor Volcano example, it might be a little more subtle, where it's like, okay, Vista was strong, now let's just make an even stronger version, right? Now, moving on to blue, this one, with 3,000 Worlds and Gum Gum Red Rock, you guys tell me what y'all think about this. Would y'all consider this a version of power creep, or is this just a progression in mana cost and value, like cost value? I honestly think it is a slight version of power creep, because for 4 cost, you're getting rid of a 5 or less, but for 2 additional costs, you're getting rid of anything in the game, right? That, for me, is an example of power creep, at least, you know, to me personally. And one thing I will say is sometimes power creep is a good thing. Like, let me get back to this Hound Blaze one. I do think this Meteor Volcano, I think the trigger is incredible. I'm not complaining about the trigger, but the actual effect itself, you know, paying 2 to KO a 1 or less, that you know, that's a little weak in my personal opinion. Maybe it is more realistic to KO based on what the cost is in this game. Now, yes, I have advocated before for better removal in this game, but a lot of people seem to not agree with that stance, which I'm okay with. I understand that. Because in my mind, you know, I come from the old school Magic mindset of, okay, if I'm going to pay 2, it better KO the character no matter how big it is. That's my mindset coming from Magic the Gathering. And for those who don't know, that's a card called Doomblade or Terror. I pay 2, I get rid of any non-black character in the game. That's just how that works in that game. Well, in One Piece, it's a little different, and that's fine. So, but if it's going to be full-on removal of anything in the game, maybe 6 is where the number needs to be at. And maybe that's, you know, 3,000 Worlds is still very good, obviously, but I do feel like Red Rock is a slight bit of power creep, because it's only 2 Dawn extra over 3,000 Worlds. And I get it. Sometimes 3,000 Worlds is just strictly better because a deck might not even run cards over 5 cost, like with Trafalgar Law and Zorro. Sometimes those decks don't even run cards over 5 cost. So that way, 3,000 Worlds is just better. I get it. But I think y'all see what I'm saying with the cost value, you know, association there, or proportionality. Okay, so another way that power creep happens is way less obvious. So I'm just going to walk through some sets here. In OP01, there was this card called Dracula Mihawk. We all know what it is. Okay, bottom deck's a 7 or less. That's very powerful. But it didn't see a whole lot of play at the time because blue just wasn't crazy back then. It didn't have quite enough answers. The arsenal wasn't big enough yet, right? Okay, but then OP03 comes around, and we see Zeph, and, I'm sorry you can't really see him back here. This is Sogeking. And it had these, you know, Zeph came out in OP03, and so does Sogeking. Zeph bounces a 3 or less, and then Sogeking bounces a 6 or less. And then OP04 comes out, and we get Kaido, who can bounce an 8 or less and a 3 or less. And then finally in OP05, we're looking at Borsalino, who's going to be able to bounce a 4 or less to bottom of deck. Now, again, when Mihawk was out by himself, it wasn't really anything that crazy. But I don't know if you guys noticed what I was saying there. Okay, turn 5 will bounce a card. Or, excuse me, 5 Dawn will bounce a card. 7 Dawn will bounce a card. 9 Dawn will bounce a card. And then 10 Dawn will bounce a card. You see what's going on there. Where, like, now, all of a sudden, I got to go back to the title screen real quick. This leader right here in the middle right, Sakazuki. I call him Subzuki because in Magic, U stood for blue because they had black as well. So instead of having 2 Bs, B was black, U was blue. So I just call this guy Subzuki now. And this guy, all of a sudden, he turns on these cards and makes them even stronger with his effect to lower the cost of characters in play. And that's a whole nother thing. I wish I did not include any real leader examples of power creep, but I wish I would have compared, let me go back one more time, sorry guys. I should have compared Isho to Subzuki here. It's not even close, guys. Like, I know some people think, like, yeah, but you can pay 1 to stand a character. Yeah, I'd always rather just trash a card from my hand and draw a new card. You know, I would always rather do that. Well, typically speaking. I guess there's, you know, you can argue for anything. But this effect, the Subzuki's effect is free, whereas the Isho's effect is not. Okay? And then when attacking -1, well, there's no board clear in this game. Well, okay. They're starting to print some, but realistically for blue and black, there is no true legitimate board clear. Or I should say for green-black, excuse me, because it shows green-black. For green-black, there is no legitimate board clear, so paying 1 to reduce everything's cost by 1 just isn't really that powerful compared to just for free giving -1 to one of your opponent's characters and removing 1 character every turn with this effect comboed with your characters. Does that make sense? And again, if anything is confusing, just ask in the comment section below and I'll, you know, hop down there as fast as possible, try to answer it. Okay, so let's go on to purple, an example of power creep in purple. So back in ST05, we had a film deck here. This, I believe this is the film the Shanks film deck. For 4 costs, you get a 5,000 power character that on play adds a Dawn from your Dawn deck and rests it. Right? Okay, cool. That's pretty solid. Well, now look at what we're seeing in ST10. This is just 5 starter decks or structure decks later, whatever you want to call it. 4 cost, 5,000 power with a 1,000 counter. And I'm sorry this is in Japanese, guys, but it's literally Ain's effect, but it's on play and when attacking. And I think the only stipulation is you have to have less Dawn than your opponent. And I'm sorry if I get that wrong. Y'all correct me in the comment section below if I get it wrong. I apologize. But I'm pretty sure that's correct. So, yes, there is a small stipulation. But for those who don't know how this deck works, you should, other than in a mirror match, you should have lower Dawn than your opponent. And if you don't have lower Dawn than your opponent, then who cares, right? Then you're doing just fine anyway. So again, this for me is an exact example of power creep, similar to the Hound Blaze example. Okay, for green, this one, some people might argue, goes either way on. Over on the left, we have OP01 Demon Face. This is a 6-cost event that KOs 2 of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 5 or less. Okay, well, why would I even play this card, realistically, if I could play a 6-cost 7,000 power body that KO'd 2 4 or less cards? Now, yes, you do have to trash a card from your hand with Krieg, but you're establishing a 6-cost 7k body with double attack, and you're potentially KOing 2 of your opponent's characters with cost 4 or less. So, yes, I would say this is more of a subtle version of power creep, and it starts to really show the true colors of what One Piece is built around, and it's the characters. The leaders, too, obviously, but the characters, where it's like, okay, I think instead of having these effects that are like potential board clears, they just want to make you battle characters versus characters, which is cool. I get that. Who knows if that changes in the future. I hope at least one color gets to change that in the future, like whether they make it blue or yellow or what. Well, not yellow, excuse me, but like blue or whatever color they choose, maybe even black. Because I feel like it'd be nice if one color was just known for being super event heavy, and that's how it played. I've talked about it before with Nami, the leader, the blue Nami leader. I don't like that deck having an alternate win condition the way it does, but I do like how it is just straight events. I think that's really cool and an interesting version of the game, an interesting way to play the game. But anyway, I do think this is a subtle version of power creep. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comment section below. And then moving on to the next one. As sets move on, you're just going to see these incredibly powerful characters pop up. Sabo being a great one from OP04. Same thing with Yamato, OP04, and Gidatsu, OP05. These characters are just incredibly strong. Compare Gidatsu here to Sakazuki. It's not a perfect example, obviously, but it's still a very relevant example. 5 cost, 6,000 power, 1,000 counter. I'm sorry, guys, I don't have Sakazuki on the screen, but he's a 6 cost, 7,000 power, no counter. Sakazuki's effect allows you to KO a 5 or less by trashing a card from your hand. So it is a little bit more statically powerful, but Gidatsu's is potentially as powerful and not even trashing a card from your hand, where it has on play KO up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost equal to or less than the number of your opponent's life cards. Same thing with Yamato KOing, but this one KOs based off of both players' life cards. So what I'm trying to say is, like, yes, sometimes there is a small condition to the power creep, but you're going to build your deck so that the conditions are met. Does that make sense? Like, for example, in a deck that runs Gidatsu and Yamato, you're probably going to run Katakuris to put cards on the top of your opponent's life, and, what's it called? The 3 cost, Pound. Right, y'all see what's going on there? Okay, and then last but not least, I think this is my final slide. Yeah, it is. Excuse me. These are new cards coming out in OP06, I believe. So, spoiler warning, these are coming out in in probably like 6 months or something, 7 months. I don't even know how long. Maybe 5, whatever it is. Excuse me. But on the left here is a 9 cost, 9,000 power Zoro card that has, when attacking, pay 1, set this as active, and then activate main once per turn. These are both once per turn. Pay 2, set this card as active. So you see how, like, you can stand him twice in 1 turn. So theoretically, if this card survives on the board for 1 turn, you can put 7 Dawn on him to put him at 16k and swing 3 times with him. Right, this is a perfect example of, like, subtle, you know, ever-growing power creep. Like, okay, we have to make even stronger cards for people to stay interested. And then, likewise, with Sanji on the right here. He is a 9 cost, 9,000 power character that has reveal the top card of your deck. You may put it into play by revealing a character that costs 9 or less other than Sanji, then place the remaining card on the bottom of your deck in any order. Yeah, it doesn't say in any order because it's just 1 card. So let me translate. Again, this is just like a rough translation. Basically, when you play this card, you look at the top card of your deck, and if it's a character, you can play it if it costs 9 or less. As long as it's not Sanji. So it can't, like, go Sanji into something else. It would have to be Sanji into, like, but, for example, if it's a blue-green deck, you could technically go Sanji into Zoro, if they're lined up that way. If you, like, do a Doflamingo search or a Perona search and set it up that way, like, imagine that kind of, you know, synergy going on. Where, okay, even if they remove this guy, the Zoro, are they going to be able to remove the Sanji as well? These are 9 cost, 9,000 power characters. Very sticky. So, anyway. I won't go into too much of a balance discussion here. I think one of the main reasons that power creep happens is because of subtle imbalances in the game that try to get combated in different ways. And, like, for example, we know for the longest time over here in the West and in the East, red was very dominant. So, well, what do? You know, instead of trying to correct red, we'll just print, you know, stronger and stronger cards that have answers, like, for example, 3,000 Worlds, Red Rock, well, not so much for red, but you get the point. And, oh, okay, we'll print all these cards that bounce. And then eventually what happens is, over time, they all add up. You know, because, like I said, for example, you know, with Mihawk, at first it's like, oh, this card's no good. You know, this card used to be very cheap. For those who don't know, this card used to be very cheap. But now in the marketplace, it's pricey. I'm not going to do any kind of market stuff because I've got a slideshow open, but you guys get the point. This card is extremely expensive because all of a sudden, this card's insanely powerful. Well, the card didn't change. It wasn't errated. Nothing changed. This card has always been a 9 cost, 9,000 power character that has on play to bottom deck a 7 cost or less. But now this card is getting comboed with so many things between the new Sakazuki leader, this guy right here, Queen, a blue-yellow deck, and just so many different, you know, areas. It's just, all of a sudden, the card is very powerful. You know, and again, it's not that the card changed in value in any way, shape, or form. It's just that over the course of time, when more and more cards were added to synergize with it, all of a sudden it's, you know, very, very strong. Or people realize how strong it actually was to begin with. Okay, well, that's about it, guys. Y'all tell me what y'all think in the comment section below. Hopefully this explained what power creep was. And I understand, you know, this wasn't a perfect explanation of power creep, but I think I at least got the points across. And if there's any questions or anything, don't be afraid to leave them in the comment section below. So last but not least, please don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Come hang out with us on Discord. We talk about stuff like this, new cards coming out. We talk about all kinds of crazy stuff, new decks, you know, new deck ideas, deck theory crafting, so on and so forth, you know, you name it. So come hang out on there with us if you haven't already hopped on there. And, yep, until next time, guys. Peace.